Well, Grey's Anatomy just hit a huge milestone for television. And here to talk about that today is with Gold Derby is showrunner, executive producer Krista Vernoff, and co-executive producer, writer Elisabeth R. Finch. And Krista, Grey's Anatomy recently surpassed ER as the longest running medical drama in TV history. And, ER produced a paltry 331 episodes or something like that. And you guys are now way past that. So what does that accomplishment mean to you guys?
It's kind of bigger than we can wrap our heads around. We all watched ER growing up, and I think ER is one of the big influencers of all of us as writers and of this show. So we're really blown away, and we're proud, and we're grateful, and it's bigger than we can quite get our heads around. The idea of making history is insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Because first last season was the 300th episode, and I'm like, oh, that's huge, 300. And now this milestone, like, what's next? Like, what's the next milestone? Are you guys going to eventually surpass Law and Order?
I doubt it. I mean, I think it's like, in any good 12-step program, you go one day at a time. We're going one episode at a time, and we're grateful, and we're going to do the best work we can and see how long it lasts.
Well, speaking of great work, Elisabeth, one episode that you wrote this season just really hit fans in the heart, and it was called Silent All These Years. It was the one that dealt with the rape kits and the sexual assault aftermath. Can you talk a little bit about the creative process behind such a powerful episode?
Well, 3 years ago, I went through what they called a story tour that was through the Writers Guild that they offered, and a small group of us went to tour through the Rape Treatment Center in Santa Monica, UCLA, which is what is looked at as the gold standard, both nationally, I think internationally as well, for how they treat victims of sexual assault. And I went thinking at some point I might come up with an idea for it. And there were a couple of moments that stuck in my brain that I couldn't shake and let go. And when Krista started working here, we started working around the same time as the Kavanaugh hearing started to be put everywhere. And the idea of wanting to talk about consent and have those conversations about as dynamic as possible, those conversations about how long lasting it could be, what the impact is, how we take care of people who are survivors, how we listen to survivors. And it just seemed like the perfect time to put it all together.
Yeah. We were working together on an episode that Finch wrote and that I directed when Dr. Blasey Ford gave her testimony. And we were so affected. And I wrote to the writers and I said, we have to do something about consent, because it felt like the entire world, particularly of young people who were the age that Dr. Blasey Ford was when she went through this, were being told that that experience was irrelevant and not to be believed, that consent was irrelevant. And listening to these pundits on television talk about how it was 30 years ago and how could she possibly remember, and maybe she got the name wrong, the face wrong. And it felt like we have this platform and we have an opportunity not to engage politically, but to teach people about consent and to talk about rape and to talk about what it is to survive and how deep and long that impact can be and how real and how memorable. And that day I turned to Finch and I said, I heard that you'd had a pitch some time ago about a hallway full of women supporting a survivor, and it never quite made it into a show. Can you talk to me about that? And within an hour of that, Camilla, who's the actress who plays Jo, wrote to me and said, I know you guys are thinking about who my mother is going to be. I feel like we've got to do something. We've got to say something. What if she was a survivor of rape? And it was like one of those creative convergences, one of those moments where you feel inspiration turn into action. And it just all came together. And I said to Finchy, go write it.
Yeah. One of the great things about the episode was the nonlinear storytelling. Like it did the scenes at the diner and then intercut with the scenes in the hospital. And Grey's Anatomy doesn't do a lot of the flashbacks and the nonlinear storytelling. So what went into that idea specifically?
Well, what was interesting to me was trying to pair up a scenario where one woman had no one and had nothing and no support and no one she felt she could tell her truth to, juxtaposed with a current story that was walking through our hospital where she had everything she needed, where she had all the support she could possibly have, where she had people who believed her at the jump, where she had people that she could confide in that could take care of her. And we had set up a long time from the beginning of Jo's journey that her arrival on the show, that she was left at a fire station. And so that was always a lingering question as to why. And so to me, it was interesting to pair those two. And Krista said, make it the whole episode. And I kept trying to figure out what you pair something so powerful as a consent story. It's hard to pair that up with a dating story or with a, what do I want to do with my career story? So the idea that Krista could say, make it the whole thing, felt like it was really perfect to watch Jo face her past and show what it was like to confront her mother and learn her origin story, and then see what she goes and does with it a couple days later with this person who walks in. And maybe someone else who wasn't so attuned to what Jo was attuned to would not have seen it, would not have seen this patient walking through the hallways, would not have paid attention to Abby in quite the same way or noticed her or been able to help her in quite the same way. So it was an interesting pairing to do, even though it was not the most linear way we've always done it.
And watching the rape kit scene take place, it occurred to me, I've never seen something like this on television before. Was there any pushback from standards and practices? Were they iffy on any specific things you guys were doing?
Can I just address the first part of your question, your sentence?
Yeah.
I've never seen this on television before. Isn't that amazing to think about? How many times have you seen rape on television?
Yeah.
A lot of times. How have we never seen the impact of rape in this way? How have we never seen a detailed rape kit? We played it in one song, but showed all the pieces of it. I think the reason we've never shown it is because culturally we focus on the male experience. I think that culturally stories are told from the male perspective. And so rape stories are often told about the husband of a woman who has been raped and his rageful response and desire to go after the rapist, or the cop who's seeking, but the woman who's impacted and what she goes through in the wake of it is a thing we don't see on television. And that, I think, is the thing I'm most proud of, is that we said, that's crazy. And in terms of pushback from ABC, no, I mean, you know, an interview we gave was taken a little out of context and designed. Oh, we went to work. That's ABC gives us notes. Some of them some of them we push back to them and say we don't think it makes sense. They gave us the standard notes on the rape kit scene, standard notes, and we said, no, we don't think that's the right. We want to show all of it. And we were able to point to times when they've shown rape. And when we pointed that out, they actually came back and said, you're right. That was the interview we were trying to give, is to give credit to ABC. Yeah. That they said, you're right, do it the way you've scripted it. When we said, you depict rape, that is violence and bad, and this is the upshot of rape. Why would you not depict this? They said, you're right, shoot it, do it. And even so much so that the woman who works in the broadcast and standards department came and stood in that hallway of women. So that's
she was so proud to do that, because she had felt like we had all come to this collective understanding of how often we show the violence, but what the caretaking is involved is suddenly is somehow previous to this not something that feels appropriate for TV. But we found everyone just felt really proud of us all sort of shifting our gaze and realizing that this is so important.
I think it's also, if I may, a reflection of our culture where everybody wants to put everybody at war all the time. So that they fought and won, they fought ABC, they were at odds. It's like we're telling a story about people from all walks of life, all races, all sizes, all shapes coming together, all political. I imagine a hallway of women, we have all political types too. We're telling a story about coming together and supporting women. And the headlines after the interview were about people at war with each other. And I think that's why I think this episode was so important. And that's why I think it's just a drop in the bucket. But anything that can influence us toward unity and toward supporting each other and toward not constantly being in a binary war is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, after 15 seasons, the cast is incredibly big at this point. Not just the series regulars, but you have the recurring interns and all the extras. How do you guys in the writer's room set things out so that each character gets their own storylines? Do you plan the whole season in advance?
We don't plan the whole season in advance. We tend to plan the season in thirds. We have 24 episodes, and we have at any given time anywhere between 11 and 14 series regulars in addition to the recurring characters. So we have a board, and every series regular has a column on that board and the writer's pitch, and we fill up the columns and then with pitches that we like, and then we have another board of episode numbers and we combine the pitches, and that's an episode. And we build season arcs about 8 episodes at a time. We sort of sometimes have a loose notion of where we're going at the end of the season, and sometimes we don't.
And this episode ended up catapulting a whole arc for Joe that we weren't necessarily anticipating in the beginning of the season. Because having something so profound and learning such profound information about who your father is, how you were born, how you came into the world in this situation really impacts her for the rest of the season. And that's something that we hadn't necessarily thought through and planned and realized. But once we saw the episode and how deeply Joe is impacted by that, it would seem false to just have it be neatly tied up in a bow and to not carry that through for episodes to come.
It completely changed the course of our storytelling.
Yeah,
completely. We had loose ideas of where we were going with Joe in the second half of the season, and this decision and how exquisitely written this episode was, and how beautifully played and how beautifully directed. The impact on that character had to be profound. And so we took a really hard left turn in terms of what we were doing with her and what we are doing with her this season. And I think you have to be prepared for that. No matter how much you plan, your season evolves as your writers and your directors and your actors do their job, and you have to be prepared to change course.
How often is it that an actor will come to you with an idea and you actually say, oh, that's a great idea, and let's put it in the episode?
Often.
Yeah.
It's rare that they come with an idea quite this big. But for me, we're 15 seasons into this show, and many of these actors have been living with these characters for a decade or more. And so if they come to me and they say, here's a thing I've always wanted to do, or here's a thing I have been thinking about, I often put it in the show, because we're thinking about 15 or 14 characters and 24 episodes, and they're only thinking about the character themselves. That's the actor's job, is to live the world through the character that they're playing. So they've got very unique and very specific points of view, and we welcome them.
Elisabeth, is there one character that you enjoy writing more than anyone else? I'll say as a viewer, Bailey from the pilot. Bailey has been my favorite character, and she still is 15 seasons later.
Well, before I worked here, I was a crazy fan, and I still continue to watch in the same way that I have always watched, which is with a weird antenna that barely gets reception. at 8 o'clock with the commercials, even though I still work here and know what's happening. Because I've fallen in love with different characters at different points of view. I will definitely say this episode helped me drop into Jo in a way that I never had before. I've always enjoyed her. I've always been delighted by both the human and her performance, but there was something about how she rose in this particular episode, despite all the information that she's absorbed, and then how she took care of someone else has really just startled me of how much I really connect. It's kind of why I enjoy writing these hyper-focused episodes and centric episodes, because you get to drop into characters both as audience members and for me as a writer in a way that you don't often get to. But I really, truly don't have a favorite. It changes all of the time.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Bailey's always been one of my favorites, though, from the very beginning. I have to say, I understand why she's your favorite, because writing a Bailey monologue, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, exactly.
You get to use apps.
It's great.
There was one other storyline I just had to mention, that Meredith reuniting with Thatcher on his deathbed. It was such an emotional moment, especially for longtime fans who have known this Thatcher character for years, but we hadn't seen him for a while, I guess because maybe I think the actor was on Scandal. But what went into the process of bringing him back and having Ellen Pompeo have those great moments with him?
Well, Finchy wrote that episode also. So for any Emmy voters who are watching.
I didn't even know that.
Finchy wrote that episode also and deserves all the nominations. What went into that is that we were telling a story about Catherine having cancer, and Finchy felt passionate about telling that story, and she can talk about why if she wants to. But for me, I said to Finchy, if you want to tell a story where Catherine gets a dire diagnosis and survives it, you must balance it for me with the story where someone we care about very much dies. I need that balance, because we've done a lot of near misses, a lot of rescuing people. April almost died and lived. We've had a lot of people almost die and live. And I said, if you want to do it again, okay, but I need this too.
Yeah. And the Catherine storyline was very personal to me, because I am someone who is living with cancer, and it's something that I've never seen on television, where someone was diagnosed with advanced stage cancer and then goes through quite a bit of hell, but then also gets to go back to their lives and live in a more chronic condition. And the Thatcher part to me, after Krista said that with the balance, is I love how this show has always tied up loose ends or connected things somehow and not dropped things. And Thatcher, even though he did have a day job on Scandal, was still Meredith's father, and he had been gone from her world for quite some time. And I had personally just lost my aunt, and we did not have good, we had a lot of friction and a lot of complication between us. And so it was really interesting for me to figure out how to put some of those things into those moments with Meredith and Thatcher, because the reality of those moments sometimes is you don't have a perfect life in front of you, and they're dying, and sometimes you have a chance to say all the things you want to, and sometimes they come out sideways and backwards, and you get to laugh at the ridiculousness of something of your past, and you just take whatever moment you have. And we had one long day, so the interest of having one long day with Meredith and Thatcher, and particularly the end where she is just talking about her kids as he passes away, is something very personal to me, because that's what I spend most of my time with my aunt telling, is just telling her stories of her grandkids. But I've always loved the Thatcher Meredith relationship as
me too.
It is. So to get to wrap that up and bring some kind of closure and a little bit of grace into that was a gift.
Well, we are big awards nerds here at Gold Derby, and I just have to ask, Krista, you got the nomination for Best Writing for, I think it was a season 2 episode. What did that recognition mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was season 2 of Grey's Anatomy. It was an episode, Into You Like a Train, where the people were stuck together on the pole. Yeah, I had been writing TV by season 2, almost 10 years at that point. And I mean, it's just wild. That was wild. It was crazy. Shonda called me at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and she was nominated and I was nominated. That's just like it's an incredible feeling to be acknowledged by your peers in that way. It was a really big deal. And I remember like Shonda and I, like we were getting our dresses designed, and it was like still early on the show. It was like, we got these dresses, and you know, we really wanted to win. And I remember sitting there and my name, when they put my name up, like it was as a nominee, I thought everyone I went to high school with just saw that. That's enough for me. Like, I don't need to win.
Amazing.
Like, it was like, oh, I don't need to win. And then I didn't win, and I was kind of relieved. And I don't have to get up there. And I was pregnant, and it's an incredible thing. I want it for her this year. That's what I want. Yeah.
What would that mean to you to receive that call on the Emmy nominations morning? And you're, oh my gosh, you're a nominee.
It would mean, truly, it would mean more people saw this episode. It would mean that it resonated with people in a way that I don't think we've ever had these conversations about assault and consent. It would mean more people would watch it. We heard recently that 43%, there was a 43% uptick in phone calls to RAIN, which is the national hotline for survivors of assault. And it, just knowing that from what aired, that's what happened, and knowing and continuing to hear stories of people who are telling us their stories, or that they went to go report something they didn't report for years. Conversations of friends of mine that I've known for decades that are telling me something from one airing. It would mean more people would be doing that. It would mean the conversation would continue, and it would mean that we're listening as a collective culture.
And I would like to add to that this episode was written by this extraordinary woman. It was directed by Debbie Allen, this extraordinary force of nature.
Absolutely.
It was edited by Vanessa Delgado. It was DP'd by Alicia. What's her last name? My brain. Robbins. That's what I thought. I almost said it. And then my point is, this was
Showrun by Krista.
When the nominations come out year after year after year, and we see lists of all male editors and all male directors and all male writers, and that happens frequently, and the answer is, well, that's who was making the best work. I feel that that's not true. I feel that that's the work that people are paying attention to, and here we have what I believe is an exquisite piece of art that has had a massive social impact and that is riveting television. And I don't want to hear this year there weren't viable female nominees, because I'm sitting beside one.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Before we go, is there anything you can tease about the final episodes of season 15?
I mean, we took some big swings.
Yeah.
We took some big swings. We were bold. They're exciting.
This finale is one of my favorite. This is one of my very favorite finales.
It's unexpected.
Yeah.
We're not resting on our laurels in season 15.
No.
Great. Well, thanks for chatting with us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.